My name is Elton, and this is a mini-series on my channel where I'll be taking a look at artifact sets that have similar effects and uses, specifically for characters who can utilize them well, but have to go through some sort of constant debate of which one to choose. I hope to shed some light on how these sets differ and whether the trade-offs that each of them have are actually worth it, as well as how units can actually proc these effects properly. However, like always, I have to give a disclaimer. I'm not here to calculate percentages or crunch the numbers on any character's damage output. I am only here to explain how these artifacts work, how well they work in the current state of the game, and how well these effects can be taken advantage of. I am not here to shame, humiliate, or insult anyone who chooses one set over another for their builds. I also want to say that I do compile my information from the most up-to-date guides from the Kaching Main's website, as they have a plethora of very helpful information, so if you're wondering where I got all this knowledge, I got it from there. Now, with all that said and done, welcome to Artifact Antagony. Fontaine's introduction to the game ushered in something very broken that many players thought would never grace it in the form of a 5-star artifact. Crit rate is an extremely valuable stat that many players try to balance out on their characters to land those insane damage numbers, and doing so was, and still is, pretty difficult, especially for the ones who don't spend any money. But after Marechaussee Hunter was revealed, this ultimately got a lot easier, however with a few catches. Marechaussee Hunter's 2-piece effect increases normal and charge attack damage of the wielder, and its 4-piece increases the crit rate of the character by 12% for 5 seconds whenever their HP increases or decreases. There's a max of 3 stacks, each with independent timers. And as for the counterpart that I want to compare to today is going to be Vermillion Hereafter. Its 2-piece effect gives a pretty standard 18% increase in attack, while its 4-piece is quite the long paragraph. After a character uses their elemental burst, they will at first gain an 8% increase in attack for 16 seconds. Then whenever they lose HP, they will gain a 10% increase in attack as well. This can stack up to a max of 4 times and can trigger every 0.8 seconds. This lasts for the entirety of the time the character is on field, and is reset the moment the character either leaves the field or when that character activates their burst again. So what I really want to focus on in today's video is the concept of the ever-changing HP mechanic. Fontaine brought in many characters who were able to increase and decrease their health in order to proc the effects of mainly Marechaussee Hunter, along with the respective Archon of that region following suit. This was quite powerful due to it being able to increase crit rate, which before was only really able to either be done by a 4-star artifact set, aka Berserker, or some other dubiously inconsistent means, like Rosaria. However, this mechanic was not the first of its kind, and actually originated with Vermillion. However, its effect isn't as valuable since it gives attack, which after a while can only increase damage by a bit after building it to a ridiculous amount. Additionally, the requirements to make this are a bit more interesting. Vermillions can only proc the moment an elemental burst is used, and will only give further increases in attack when you lose HP. Marechaussee only requires you to lose or gain HP, consistently enough where you could essentially consistently have all 3 stacks at the same damn time. Marechaussee's requirements are easier to fulfill. However, there's a nice part about Vermillion where the attack boost isn't really restricted to a cooldown, so there's a bit of unforeseen consistency. For the characters, these are all characters who can fluctuate their HP, giving way to the opportunity to proc the effects. There are some more wonky ones to cover, but I'll leave those at the end of the section like I always do. First is Neuvillette. He is probably the best example of someone who should be a Marechaussee Hunter. His prolonged special charge attack drains his HP while his skill and burst help him heal himself. His skill and burst summon source water droplets when they hit opponents, and when he absorbs them, he heals his health. He deals almost all of his damage with his charge attack, and its 2-piece effect is perfect for it. Vermillion Hereafter doesn't work because Neuvillette can activate his burst and can use his charge attack, but ultimately it wouldn't make sense due to the fact that his damage scales off of HP, not on attack, so all the additional attack would be completely wasted. He can proc it, but it would just do nothing. Lyney is also a great example of someone who should be a Marechaussee Hunter. He loses HP when he performs his charge level 2 attack. It summons a taunt and it distracts opponents, and every time he consumes HP with this charge level 2, Lyney gains a stack. The amount of HP consumed with this stack is 20% of his max HP. And these stacks help him heal when he uses his skill. His skill consumes up these stacks and heal him for 20% per stack. Lyney can be put on Vermillion, but Marechaussee just happens to be more valuable. Lyney's rotation would have to start off with his burst every rotation, which honestly isn't really recommended or needed for that sort of team. Lyney would also gain a massive amount of attack from simply the team he would be in as well, with Pyro teammates giving Pyro Resonance, which increases attack by 25%, and Bennett being his go-to healer, giving a massive boost in attack. Marechaussee is just also simply better stat-wise since it's able to balance out his stats while also boosting his charge attacks, which are his main source of damage. Wriothesley is another DPS that would love Marechaussee. His skill state allows him to consume HP with his normal attacks, and each normal attack in this state consumes 4.5% of his max HP, along with a passive that allows him to heal himself every 5 seconds if his HP is below 60%. He can perform a charge attack that will heal himself 30% of his max HP. Most of his damage is locked in his normal and charge attacks, and using his burst isn't really incentivized or needed for a rotation. Vermillion can be procced since you could use his burst and then go into his skill state, but Wriothesley already benefits from extra attack from his passive, and he honestly would appreciate the more crit rate instead. Xiao's tailor-made set is Vermillion Hereafter. Xiao consistently loses HP during his burst state, making it a lot easier to proc. Anemo doesn't really have many ways to boost its damage, since it doesn't really have any reactions to go off of, so all that extra attack is much appreciated. Now, Marechaussee can work on him, but the 2-piece effect is completely useless on him since his damage is based in plunging attacks. It is important to note, though, that Marechaussee can come close to Vermillion, but only if you really pair him with Xianyun, since she buffs plunging attacks. This balances out the buffing a bit better, but all in all, Vermillion Hereafter is tailor-made for Xiao. Gaming is actually very similar to Xiao, as he is also a plunge attack DPS, but he can rely on reactions to boost damage. However, Marechaussee actually happens to be the better one in the end due to how Vermillion gives additional attack to the point where it starts to lose value. His main teammates usually are Bennett, which means that he already gets a lot of attack from his burst. Marechaussee only helps him round out his stats, but again the 2-piece is ineffective on him. Crimson Witch is also a notable set that is on par with Marechaussee in this case. Crimson Witch's 4-piece effect gives 3 stacks of extra pyro damage bonus whenever that character's elemental skill is activated, and Gaming can proc this super well during his burst state. Now, we are getting to the more situational ones as we go further and further down. These characters all have HP changing mechanics, but lack the necessary assets to take advantage of either sets properly. Lynette is a very interesting case because hers is specifically Constellation locked. Lynette does have an HP changing mechanic with her skill, but her damage is mainly focused in her burst. However, at C4 she does gain an extra charge of her skill, and at C6 she actually gains an Anemo infusion after hitting an opponent with her skill. And with the 2 charges and the infusion, she actually has a perfect uptime for Anemo infusion. This actually opens the door to her being played as a main DPS. Marechaussee actually becomes a really great set for her, following in suit with her twin brother, being able to take on the advantage of normal and charge attack damage buff. However, Desert Pavilion Chronicle is also a pretty decent option in increasing her Anemo damage. Hu Tao is also a very interesting option. She loses HP in a single instance when she activates her elemental skill, and her burst heals her. Vermillion doesn't work on her since she would want to use her burst in her skill state, meaning essentially it's the opposite order. Vermillion would want you to lose HP after your burst, but Hu Tao actually heals from her burst. Additionally, attack isn't as prioritized as HP on Hu Tao. Marechaussee's 2-piece is only valuable to her, and Hu Tao's HP doesn't change consistently enough to keep up with the crit rate increase. It's only 1 loss in HP during her skill, and then gaining HP again with her burst. It's not consistent enough. Crimson Witch overall is a better option, with Shimenawa's Reminiscence following suit afterwards. Now, with Furina, while she can make everyone lose HP with her Uziah version of her skill and heal with the Numa version of her skill, her damage doesn't fall under normal and charge attacks. She's specifically an elemental skill sub-DPS. Marechaussee wouldn't work due to its increasing the wrong source of damage, and Vermillion is very useless for her since Furina's damage is based on her HP. Additionally, she's a lot better as a sub-DPS anyway, so playing her as a main DPS isn't really all that much worth it. Dea is a support unit that honestly hasn't really aged well since her release, but she's still someone I thought would be a great idea to talk about in this video. Dea's role is a support unit, with somewhat edging on sub-DPS with most of her damage in her skill. Her skill essentially creates a field that acts as a giant damage net that soaks up damage and sends a portion of it to Dea. Marechaussee actually can't increase that damage. And Dea can only heal herself after a certain period of time, but that's only restricted to 2 things: how low her HP falls as a whole, and a cooldown of when it can trigger again. She can benefit from the attack boost of Vermillion, but it can't really be triggered since she would need to be on field to keep the attack bonuses, but she's mainly used off field to absorb damage. All in all, this isn't great for her at all, and she shouldn't be put on either set. Huki is also in the same place, kind of a bit like Hu Tao. She's a healer support that sacrifices her own HP when using her skill, and just like Hu Tao, she only loses HP once per skill activation. Marechaussee won't be consistent enough since the HP drain happens only once per activation and she has a long cooldown for it. Kuki's damage is either based in HP, or if it is an attack, it's extremely low multipliers we're talking about here, so Vermillion buffing the raw damage for Kuki isn't very effective. Not to mention, we all know how broken Kuki is with Hyper Bloom, so that's just a lot better with her. So, as we can see, Marechaussee Hunter seems to be the victor here. It's an artifact set that is so powerful and made Vermillion seemingly age pretty badly. Then again, this isn't anything against Vermillion Hereafter. There have been a lot of characters on the come up who haven't needed to rely on attack, and instead rely on other stats or a mix of stats to deal vast amounts of damage. Not to mention, there are also other units in the game like Bennett and Sarah who can boost attack significantly to the point where artifacts really aren't needed to take care of that. While both crit rate and attack can get to a point where they start to lose value, attack gets to that point a lot faster than crit rate. Both are valuable stats to damage dealing units, but obtaining attack is so much easier due to the abundance of routes within the 5 types of artifact pieces, weapons, and even other units boosting it. Crit rate mainstat artifacts are locked only to headpieces, where attack mainstat artifacts can be found in the timepiece, cuppiece, and headpiece. And again, the amount of characters who want crit rate are a lot more than the characters who want attack. Neuvillette is a pretty good example of that. The last part that I wanted to bring up is actually an external factor, and that is the symbiotic relationship of Furina and healers, specifically healers who can heal by leaps and bounds, replenishing HP for the entire team in a short amount of time. I explained this more in depth in a video where I talked about how Furina pretty much perfected damage buffing, but to explain it briefly, Furina's ability to drain everyone's HP and give a team-wide damage bonus based on the shift in percentages of HP along with the healers providing set health makes it a lot easier to proc the Marechaussee Hunter 4-piece effect. This is incredibly significant to how characters aged in the growth of their favorite equipment. Characters who wouldn't normally want to be placed on Marechaussee Hunter could be placed on it now as their best option as long as Furina could be placed in their team. Not to mention, as long as you also had a healer that worked with the team, and throwing in Hydra wouldn't mess up any reactions or the team composition as a whole. So to be completely fair, Marechaussee is just sort of cheating with Furina, aka an Archon, helping it out. So yeah, this is a nice look into not just the artifacts, but this sort of strategy on the come up of using HP as a resource to deal damage, and increase it too. I wanted to get this video out pretty quickly since I wanted to make a video about the new Bond of Life artifact set versus Marechaussee Hunter, and see how it compares, as well as another video comparing the new Burning artifact set to Crimson Witch. So expect those to be out in maybe like a week or so, hopefully, if I can get those out, like, done. But yeah, you already know what button to press if you want to see more on a regular basis. If you have something to say, I can only hope that it's nice. Thank you, and bye!